G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War update for the 26th of July 2026. And before I begin, I'd like to say I don't like clickbaity titles. I rarely click on clickbait titles. But you have to watch the whole thing because to say clickbait, and I know some of it can be interpreted as a propaganda stunt, but it's not up to us. It's up to the people in charge how they're going to deal with the unfolding situation as it is. And as the war continues, I'll continue to bring you coverage from both sides. Otherwise, there's a lot of stuff you miss out on that makes puts the whole war into context. Now, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And that is, I suppose, the part where most liberals don't want to see, because it threatens their worldview. They'd rather be wrong than right. They'd rather live the lie. They want to manifest destiny rather than live in reality. Yes, liberalism is a mental illness of delusion. Yes, and that's often why it attracts artists and artisans, even though I would say they're actually, a lot of them are merely outrageous for the sake of standing out. Unfortunately, the younger generations copy what they see poorly because they think that's what they have to do to fit in. And so the true degenerates, they have to get worse to stand out. And that's what I think Ukraine is right now. It is getting worse. The situation is getting worse because they want to stand out. The loud, arrogant, fresh from college or straight out of high school gets to the first bar. So when he's in, he's loud. Someone pushes him, he pushes back. The guy who thinks he can take a few hits and always escalates. And yeah, they're often in lifts. They're often 5-0. And they always got a chip on their shoulder. Always got something to prove. But when they're around their mates, they're always telling you how great they are and how good they're doing. So you're never going to get bad news about Kiev. And it's very hard to find bad news about Kiev because of the lockdown on information, which permeates through so-called transparent Europe and liberal America. And don't you dare tell me America is not a liberal country. You have a liberal government in most of your states. You have at least close to 40% of your population who want to change the constitution into a pure liberal democracy. Yes, the founders, who were liberals, believed in a total different set of liberal ideals. But that's the problem, isn't it? Liberalism is full of contradictions. That's why it is constantly at odds with itself as well. And it's a degeneration that ultimately ends in a Soviet-style government. However, there have been developments in Ukraine. And so it needs context. First, Ukraine is not a central planned economy. It has not been for some time. However, it does have remnants of Soviet-era institutions. Now, believe it or not, and you don't have to believe it, but Russia attacked in what they called a preemptive strike after over a decade of provocation in their eyes with Ukraine's attacks on the separatists of the Donbass. At the time, Kiev was trying to and building an army. They wanted to build the biggest army in Europe. They wanted to be part of this European army. That is, cut out America. They have a thing called Operation Sky Shield. This is a proposal by Zelensky where EU is protected from Russian missiles by Ukrainian missile defense systems. And Ukrainian strike missiles will keep Russia in check. So everything that they have proposed, right, is all about getting Europe to fund the Ukrainian state. And in turn, the Ukrainian state has diversified and decentralized. So the Ukrainian state is no longer centralized in Kiev, but is a puppet of Brussels. So it is a Soviet-era state still, but with a new master, with a new leash, supposedly. Now, as part of this decentralization, instead of having large factories and large warehouses and large data centers, and what else? Large military bases, anything large has been mediumized. No, you don't have 9-block, other than a couple of malls, which are huge. Most things don't cover more than a couple of blocks. They don't have any large-scale manufacturing other than a few steel plants and a few coal plants and port infrastructure. Most of their warehouses, long and narrow. Truck goes in, truck goes out. Not just rows of boxes on each side. There's not much room for anything else. They've been gearing for war for a long time. Long before the collapse of the Soviet Union. They were prepared for nuclear strikes on Kiev to be able to turn any city in Ukraine into a operating capital city with command and control and communications. Soviet bunkers still dot the landscape. They were never filled in. Well, kind of filled in. They were filled up with arms and supplies. Some of them are vaults dating back to the 50s with data centers still in there, fully operational. They have fully operational nuclear launch facilities and missile production facilities. They just don't have the fuel. They can and were once a nuclear state. Now, their economy was made so that it could not be crushed, so that yet it is actually still fragile. But their power grid, though it has vulnerabilities, no longer relies on the 3 nuclear reactors, but is part of the European power grid. That is, in part thanks to the Russians, because as Russia destroys the Ukrainian power grid, the Europeans rebuild it and reconnect it. So it has elements of the Soviet era multi-phase switches. Now, what these multi-phase switches do is they change the power type, 110, 220, whatever, right? But they also they don't just transform power from one power station. They can switch from various power stations. But they can also switch the power output, and the excess power goes to their secret facilities. And they've maintained well over 100 probably, sorry, it's an estimate, launch facilities and missile production facilities. Now, these are broken up into over 100,000 small businesses also across Ukraine. This is how their drone facilities they're little machine shops, only the size of a house. Often they look like a house. Car comes, goes inside with a box of parts, half an hour comes out later with a fully operational drone. It's moving hidden within society. It is operating like a resistance movement. Decentralized, out of uniform, no markings, no transparency, no oversight. These are independent militias. They get their marching orders from Kiev, but after that, how they make the drones, where the drones are launched from, and what their targets are, well, yeah, once they're launched, that's it, yeah. Only their targets. Their targets are selected by Kiev, as far as they know. The drones, they build, modify, and as I said, these people once operated a massive cigarette smuggling network throughout Eastern Europe and into Russia. That is how they know the holes in the Russian air defense. Now, Russia supposedly, and this was the mistake the Germans made. The Germans planned out an elaborate air defense system, which actually did include missiles. And on paper, it looked amazing, but it never left the paper, it never left the drawing room. Lots of the Soviet era missile systems still haven't been replaced. Russia's been very slow, and this is why Putin was advised against for years to go to war to save the people of the Donbass. You know why he's disappointed in America? He kept getting assurances from Biden that something will be done about it, about the ethnic cleansing. Never happened. So you can understand why Russia is not trusting America. And Americans have been so educated not to trust Russia. But this isn't communist Russia. This was your chance to make sure the communists don't come to power. China's hanging Russia out to dry so the communists can come back into power in Russia. And the left in America deliberately hung out America to dry and Russia hang out to dry so that the communists will come to power in Russia. Now they're talking about countering the rise of the far right in Europe and working with China. The left are openly talking about working with China to save Western Europe from the boogeyman of the fascist. So the Ukraine war is threatening to become a global war for many reasons. One, as the political situation I outlined. Two, Ukraine has attacked Iranian shipping and taken part in so-called arms exports of interceptor drones to the UAE and other countries. Three, they've refused the peace deal, but it's back on the table after talks with Marco Rubio, where we'll get to that shortly. But there are three reasons, in short, and you may not think it, but that was the short version of the story, why Ukraine war must end, because it is threatening to become a global war. There are so many people who want to see Russia fail, however, and for Trump to fail, and that is why they are pushing Now, when Trump told Zelensky he wants to see him succeed, I actually think Trump said, I wish him well. But he wants him to succeed. When they both say they want to end the war, remember, what they say are short versions of what they're thinking and believing. So don't think just because you hear the words, they mean the same to you as the person who speaks it. We're living in a post-truth era where people speak the least amount of words to tell the least amount of truth. Yes, we're living in an age of propaganda, political propaganda, in which we cannot trust any Democrat to tell the truth. Now we have a drone strike up here. We have the usual attacks on Sumy, Kharkiv. We have attacks on outside of Pavlodar, probably an attack on transport. Fuel for fuel stations. So one drone icon doesn't always mean one drone. It means drone attack. Could be multiple drones. Zaporozhye, missile attack. We have fires in Kryvyi, most likely the result of drone strikes. Multiple explosions reported across Kryvyi. South of Odessa. And here we have, as I said, yesterday there was reports of a Romanian F-16 shooting down a drone. Again, as I told you, it was way down here. Could have been a surveillance drone watching Kiev arms supplies. And when a new arms shipment was coming, they killed the drone. Of course, fire at a power station in Zerspol it's called Operation Bring It Home, by the way. Attacks on Russia to harm the civilians of Russia, to force Putin out of office and end the war in Ukraine's favor. It ain't going to work like that, but that's what people who don't suffer the consequences of their actions. Politicians spend most of their careers making sure they are insulated from the response to their actions, whether or not it's justified or political violence. Justified legal action or political violence. They are protected. They should not be protected from political violence when they're at war. They should be just as exposed as any soldier. The civilian leadership is overrated. Civilians should be the only ones protected in war, not they put so much effort into protecting the civilian leadership. No, you can protect but the civilian leadership is superfluous in war. And especially if they instigate war. They put civilians in harm's way for their own benefit and suffer none of the consequences. Now, yes, that means Putin would be a legitimate target too, but Zelensky should be a legitimate target. The Russian people are calling for him to be murdered, to be drawn and quartered and to be kidnapped like Maduro and put on trial. He has destroyed thousands of private businesses across Russia who have nothing to do with this war. People who have no say in this war. all for his ego, so he can be Captain Sky Shield. He wants to run for the rest of his life, he wants to run a very expensive military operation, with obviously the very expensive salary that comes with it, to protect Europe from Russia. And in order to have that Sky Shield, you have to have an enemy to protect from. They're creating a new Cold War in front of your very eyes so that they can play secret squirrel games, conduct secret operations against Russia, and have this massive military complex so they can pay themselves massive amounts of money. And yet trying to explain how this is one big gigantic scam to people seems to go over most people's heads, or they tune out because they don't want to know. They want to live in the rosy delusion. They're the ones who watched Shutter Island and says, yeah, man, yeah, I'll take the lobotomy. I'd rather be the hero of my own dreams than the cold-blooded killer of reality. That is hyperbolic, but yes, they're the ones who want the delusion without the work, without the heroics, without being a firefighter or a policeman or any other non-violent. And I mean it. You compare the police to the military. A non-violent. Now, I'm not saying the military are cowards. I'm not saying that they are violent in the negative context either. But I'm saying in the ordinary, everyday hero, if there was, a word or two. Yeah, we're missing a lot of words. We don't have them yet. We don't have the language, don't have the sophistication. We're not evolved. We're far from it, and liberalism is de-evolution as far as I'm concerned. But what we have is a battlefield that has barely changed in weeks. It has changed, but the few towns, in the last week, only 8 towns. No, that's a town a day, and it's actually been 3 of those 7 days, no towns taken. Nothing significant has fallen. Lyman is still there. Drobered, they're still on the outskirts. They have taken it. They have advanced. They have taken the town. They're still on the outskirts of the town. They're still backwards and forwards here at Nova Celia. There's the cream. They have taken land. But they were back here, so they've gone to here. They have expanded out in areas. And they've taken territory here in the forest. But here and here, they're still fighting over this bridge or river crossing, I should say. It's a temporary crossing or something but yeah, they're fighting on both sides of the river, as I said they would, trying to take control of all this, which is difficult. I know. I'm not saying it's easy. The hardest thing in the hardest part of war is the offense. The defenders have all the advantages. No, Russians have only taken small amounts of the towns here. Now, they've had a huge field crossing operation successfully to start laying siege to Mykolaiv. And they've spread out. And they've only been able to overrun a few small positions, but other small positions, they're stuck. That is because Russia has insufficient manpower for the operation. They have by estimates, they're fighting an army 150,000 men larger than it. The only advantage Russia has is the thousands of Ukrainian volunteers who are helping them in occupied territories. There's virtually no armed resistance. Any anti-Russian activity doesn't last. There's no partisan movement. The Ukrainian infiltrators are found about one a week and executed. I mean, these are infiltrators, not inside. These are not people from inside the occupation zone. These are people who disguise themselves as civilians or are civilians who go into occupied territories, usually as the line of refugees retreat from the Russians, as they advance. They have Ukrainian agents who go into the occupied territories, get processed. Most of them are probably immediately not detected, and they begin anti-Russian operations and try to organise armed resistance. The only problem is most of the people in the occupied territories hate Ukraine, and anybody speaking Ukrainian is immediately suspected of being a Ukrainian operative. So it's very hard for them to operate successfully behind enemy lines. Now and again, this whole front will just shut down. Both sides can't afford to keep the entire front active at any one time, which suits Russia and gives a little bit of benefit to Ukraine. But as you can see, Russia's advancing here. Now, if Russia's advancing here, why aren't they advancing here? Well, this is, by all accounts, Russian territory. It's just that they have Ukrainian infiltrators still able to operate in this territory. The bulk of the Russian army is along the front line. Well, actually, a third in three lines. You have up to a third in security operations, logistics. And then you have reserves setting in other trenches. So you only have the active combat units on patrol in these areas trying to root out the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians are trying to, to slow down the Russians, sending men to their death. A sacrifice for the state. So you can understand why, this is how little they valued life. This is the psychopathy. Europe is becoming a psychotic state where throwing a couple of Ukrainians a day, into Koshnikovia to harass the Russians to slow them down. It's World War II levels of psychotic. You just don't care. Oh, it's the cost of doing business, as Montgomery said. You've heard it often. Must break a few eggs. Jolly-o. So that is the attitude right there. Break a few eggs. And that is exactly what they're doing. Breaking eggs. Human lives sacrificed because they think the greater good is keeping Zelensky in office rather than end this war before it goes global. Instead, Zelensky's doing everything he can to provoke a global war, to provoke a nuclear response. Because remember, Russia's nuclear army is a separate army. If the Russian state is threatened, if the existence of the Russian state is threatened, the Russian nuclear army activates and annihilates that threat. Regardless, it will just set off the sirens, get in their bunkers, and if you haven't made it to the bunkers in time, welcome to Metro 2030, where you may be attacked by a rabid dog. And your neighbor is a lamp because he glows in the dark. But that is the threat. This is why so many diplomats every day are begging Ukraine to take the L. At some point, even across Western Europe, there are going to be people who start realizing that I'm right, that Zelensky will never end this war because he is psychotically focused on destroying Russia. Why? Kazakhs. That's all you need to know. You may not find it but they have a blood vendetta against Russia because of the Tsar for kicking them out. Even though long ago the communists made peace with the Kazakhs, and there is a Kazakhstan, and there is a Jewish state in Russia. Even they returned the land to returned their land to them and everything. I think it was Yeltsin or Putin. I don't remember which, but I know it was might have been Gorbachev. But it's always been there. But there was an official returning of the land. The breaking up of the Soviet Union ended a lot of these persecutions. But there are those like remember, Zelensky's a Russian Jew, not a Ukrainian. Now, as you can see, no significant town has fallen again. There is a lot of combat activity, as you can see, even in areas that are red. Like I said, there's a lot of these markers are in the wrong place, or they signify where artillery has come from. See, they say, as soon as they say at the Pavlovsk direction, bang, they just activate a node. Okay, these markers are only rough estimates. And they get their feed, as you can see, from Ukraine in Ukrainian. And see, drones hit a parking lot in Mulberries. But they admit they're attacking civilian targets. Russian strike a terminal in Sumy, delivery service, delivery truck. They do that because they've said it in the past, that they do that because they are hitting the conscription notices. There's a Ukraine strike on the oil facility in Russia, which they allegedly destroyed last month, but they always claim they destroyed it. This time we did it. There's two strikes, actually. There's the second. There's a long-range strike again to response into Russian strikes, which was response for the strikes on Wildberries, by the way. But because Zelensky has the platform, he can say whatever he wants. Every strike in Zelensky's mind is retaliation, yet they're immediately followed by Russian strikes. And you can tell by the timelines that he is the instigator. And he is the escalator. He escalates the war. Russia's banned gasoline exports because of a shortage, and that's what Ukraine is doing. They're not attacking the military. They're attacking the Russian economy. They're trying to make the Russians destroy themselves. He wants to bring about a new communist civil war in Russia so that they have a new red state, so that Ukraine could be the protectors of Europe. Look it up. Captain Sky Shield. It's not a joke. It's a joke, but Sky Shield is a real thing. Now, before I continue, in order to elicit your support, unlike the vast majority of YouTubers who just say, give me money, I am merchandising. Now, I would love, of course, corporate support. But then again, I think if I was corporately sponsored, unless it's the same deal, I mean, allegedly, Asmongold and others have this wonderful deal, but I've been told, well, move to Florida and we'll consider it. Move to Florida and your views will double, triple overnight. Yeah. See, this is a problem, isn't it? Bigotry. People don't want you to succeed because you're not one of them. And that's what we're dealing in this world. And that's why we have a Ukraine war. Because Zelensky's a bigot. Doesn't want to see he doesn't want to see ethnic Russians succeed. As far as he's concerned, he's a Jew, not an ethnic Russian. He has said it many times. He has stopped saying it though because of the political situation in Europe. And apparently he's been also courting the Muslims in Central Europe from Albania to come fight for him against the Russians, because they hate the Russians and the Serbs. But they hate the Serbs so much they don't want to leave their homeland in case Serbia attacks again. Paranoia. Yes. Well, you're a bunch of... They're all sons of Turkish invaders. They should be sent home. All right, so launching soon is the Empire of Wells official art book. It'll be launching August 8th, hopefully, and will run for 30 days. There's the effervescent Empress Sora. All right, so, yeah, this is a little out of order, but first up, Iran has accused Ukraine of a deadly attack on a commercial ship in the Caspian Sea. In the war of words that has followed since. Here they have Zelensky's denial. Now this is believed to be part of the extra pressure on Iran by attacking their maritime trade. Noting that Iran has never intervened in the Russian conflict. Ukraine turns around and says, you sell weapons to Russia. Did not identify the commercial vessel. Zelensky has separately alleged Russia has been passing satellite imagery to Gulf states and US military in Iran. Actually, no, that was a Chinese satellite, and it is an operation by 100,000 Chinese who allegedly use civilian information available in Chinese on Chinese websites from Chinese geographic satellites that can take images, and that they have been carrying over images, separating images and sending them to Iran through social media. Zelensky's a nut job. But anyway, Russia could be. Why would Russia go out of their way to sell Iran information that China is giving them for free? Don't make sense. Why would Iran buy it if it's been given to them for free from China? Plus, they have an intelligence sharing service, which you and I don't get to know about, so... Iran and Ukraine have been at odds ever since Iran sold Shia drones to Russia. But Ukraine is selling drone interceptors to Bahrain and UAE, and then expects to be, but we're hands off us. This is the problem. They always expect to have the advantage. They don't believe in reciprocity. Anything you can do, I can do. No, they don't believe in that. They believe in privilege. like every other psychopath. They think they're special and deserve special treatment. But here is the story of the day. This Putin, in public, broadcast a short time ago by Reuters. This ain't Russian news. These are banned in Russia. They're working with Reuters. The Moscow Times is independent news from Russia, banned in Russia. They cannot legally support. They have been isolated. They can only be supported externally. They have no. This is why I say most liberals are idiots, because they're binary. They don't believe two things can be right. They don't believe two sides in a war can both be wrong. They believe pure black, pure white. They don't look at shades of grey. They're like those people who look at Mayans and say, oh, they've got big lips, they must be African. Yeah, they boil everything down to cliches, skin colour, and tinfoil hat conspiracies, that the world is flat, that all Jews are responsible for all the ills of the world, because nuance is something they can't handle. Their brains cannot simply comprehend that George Soros and his cadre are a mix of different types of Jews, different types of Muslims, different types of Protestants, different types of Catholics, and a huge stockpile of liberal atheists, all conspiring to create the New World Order, conspiring with over 200 individuals within the United Nations who should have been sanctioned under Obama for working against the United States, should have been executed under Biden, and Trump has yet to do anything against them as well. But these UN officials who plot to subvert all the world's governments and have them, by treaty, sign away their sovereignty to allow the UN to operate freely and without any oversight, to fundraise, to move people at will, to do anything they please, to take any resource they please, in the name of the greater good. Now, those who don't own anything, of course, don't give a shit if the UN came in and took all of Elon's rockets for themselves. But that's the problem with greed and envy. The world is full of idiots, and they tear civilization down every time. Every time civilization has gotten close to getting that next great leap forward, it's been torn down. Now, we've survived that tearing down so far, right? We've resisted and continued to advance technologically, but the left continue to want to take. They want to shut down Elon Musk to take his wealth, but what happens next year? That wealth doesn't exist anymore. What are you going to do? You can't eat a rocket, so they take away the funding for all those rockets, so those rockets sit idle, just like the moon program. And you'll never see a return on the investment with the moon program. $262 billion spent. Should nothing by today's money, but it was once upon a time a lot of money. Trillions wasted on useless eaters who do nothing but overproduce children to get more food, to continue the cycle of being useless eaters. Just so that the left can pour money and more money into their pocket and have a vote against and win every vote, every election, every time. That is why they're obsessed with democracy. Because the greater power. That's why they always sycophant to Islam, because, it's 2 billion Muslims. They keep reminding you. Why? Because they sycophant to large groups. They're power obsessed. So, Kremlin spokesman did not outline the current state of the... So, they outlined to Tokarev, but not to the public. But when asked to freeze the conflict, okay, we'll do the same. He'll demand Ukraine withdraw from the 4 regions Russia owns and drop. That's why there will never be peace. These 2 things. Withdraw from the 4 regions? Nope, they're ours, says Zelensky. Don't join NATO? Fuck you, says Zelensky. I'll join NATO and I'll be Captain Sky Shield. Yeah. You watch. But Kazakhstan, as I said, the Kazakhs, there you go, do exist. They still exist. They have their own country now. Zelensky, go join your brothers in Kazakhstan. No, they'll kill him in a second, in a heartbeat. Because they hate Zionists. They hate fanatics. They hate Muslim fanatics too, by the way. Now, the war in Ukraine has dramatically changed special forces operatives. They can't make a move without drones. They don't move without drones. And their lifespan is greatly reduced by drone warfare. You don't need to read a piece of shit article to know that most of these people, each month they'll lose 1 person. Special operatives, short lifespan in a war. Largest casualties are the idiots who go behind enemy lines and what you can tell from this photo and why I got it up is, ta-da! Women, equality, comrades. Women at war. You can guess what they do behind enemy lines and how they get information from Mother Russia. Or should I say, Mother Russia's husband? Well, she's out in the field ploughing. He's ploughing a different field. So, hostilities may end within hours. The ball is now in Kiev's court as of 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. This when I first read this article. It came out a short time ago. Russia has challenged Ukraine to end the war. That's what I should call this video. Yeah, sorry. And on the war. Yes. All right, so Russia's challenged Ukraine to end the war, and then they move on. Now, dark web, yep. Selling Ukrainian children. This goes back to the 90s, folks. This is the stuff that's been going on in Ukraine for quite some time. They have kidnapped children by the hundreds from Russia, Belarus, Ukraine. They get on rubber dinghies. Albanian mafia and other mafia are accused of doing this in Europe as well. They sell the children across the Middle East and Africa. And they even sell the dinghies to cross into Europe. But every group that's accused has always denied it. And always you hear from mafia YouTubers that, no, they don't touch children. So no one is trafficking children, folks. It's all Epstein. This is why the focus on the Epstein files is so dangerous. Because the binary, moronic mob will only focus on Epstein. So you'll never get anything solved, anything fixed, because they focus backwards, because they want to use everything backwards, because you can control what was, you can't control what is. And people know about what was. Okay, we know there was a Jeffrey Epstein. We know what Jeffrey Epstein did, but they conflated everything to be this huge octopus network where it was somewhere between 8 to 14 at the core, with another 100, 200 people involved. Photographers, they all worked within the fashion industry, and they were spread across the globe, and they were taking advantage of poor girls through advertising to use a legal loophole to get girls 15 to 18, 15 to 18 to model or massage, and then it led from there. And Bill Clinton allegedly took place with one of these massages, and the girl who accused him is now dead. But the wider trafficking network and trafficking of children is going on in scale elsewhere, and you are so focused on the Epstein files, you cannot see what is, only what was. You think those Epstein networks still exist and still operating with impunity? They do? How? How do you know they still exist? You ask people for proof and they cannot produce it. Because they are focused on what was, not is. Because what was is something they can control, tangible to them, and so they can take their anger out on it. Because they're emotional, not logical. They don't engage in reality. They engage in what was. They engage in the illusion. They play mind games. They try to always engage in platforming rather than debates. Because in a debate, if there's a third party that says, can you prove that? That's why they hate Joe Rogan, remember, because he's one of the few people who actually has someone there who'll actually keyboard information. I do it too. I check myself all the time. And yes, you're going to say, oh, dang, this is Russian propaganda. No shit. But if Zelensky takes it up, that puts the Russians in a very difficult situation. And with all the BRICS nations telling Russia to end this war, and Zelensky, as long as Zelensky refuses, when Putin refuses, they tell him, oh, you're going to end this war. So he says, okay, I'll freeze the front. Zelensky refuses. Okay, withdraw your troops and we'll stop attacking Kiev. Nothing happens. So the BRICS countries are now deciding what they're going to do. This is the point where I say this is the most key of all the things. Will this war go global? Because of Zelensky's pride. And I'm telling you, this is why he's not a good man in my eyes. He's an arrogant man, and I don't like arrogance. He's not good-humoured. He's a polished turd. Now, Russia struck fuel storage for supplying the Ukrainian army. Yes, they look like petrol stations. What else would you think they would look like? Having worked at a trucking company for a short time, I've had many jobs. Even the biggest military transports, that's the same thing. They all just go through petrol stations. America, it's gas. It's the same thing, though, even though you have actual gas, LNG, although it's liquefied. It's so weird, I know. I don't even remember where gasoline comes from. Yeah, a facility called Smart Intelligent Systems was hit. Allegedly, it was a storage facility and production facility of 1,000 drones. This is probably where drones are being armed. And if you've got 1,000 drones, it's like I said, logistics. Ukraine is only a logistics hub now. They still have businesses, but I mean, as far as their major businesses go, their economy has shrunk. But why the Ukrainian economy is so resilient is because they count the aid from Europe. They count all their foreign, plus Ukraine has foreign investments. They've been diversifying and preparing for war for over 10 years to be the front line so that there's nothing to destroy that will stop the war, because it's all in other countries. Anything major has left Ukraine or been destroyed already. And here you go. Russia is destroying stuff that you can't export. Port facilities, petrol stations, logistics hubs, factories, warehouses. But they're cheap. They're designed to be cheap. They're designed to be made in a short period of time. The British were able to rebuild their factories over and over again because those in range of German bombers could be replaced by materials brought from America and instantly fabricated. Something Russia can't do, and something that Nazi Germany couldn't do. That is rebuild their factories because they didn't have a third supplier. What happened? This is why the war, China, quite cleverly, got Iran to attack shipping to drive up the price of oil. Why would China do that? Because everyone else but China has secured its oil. It may get a lot of it imported, but they're trying to keep Iran isolated. They're trying to keep Iran desperate. Iran does not realize how manipulated and how indoctrinated they are and how they are being used and abused. Russia is not the problem. China is literally stealing oil at a discount rate from Iran. And Iran is thinking, oh, paradise, we'll give away the oil. We won't sell it at world price. We'll be a pariah state because we're special, we're stronger, it makes us harder. Suffering. It's a special kind of mentality that's hard to explain, how they love suffering. But whether or not you want to believe it, China is stealing resources from the world, across Africa, across Europe, across Asia, all at discount rates because all these countries are desperate for their war economy against Russia, and they're keeping you distracted. The corrupt politicians are keeping you distracted and want you to sit at home ordering from Temu all day. What are you going to order on Temu? Yeah. Eventually going to run out of... Yeah, that's what they do. Buy $10 shoes, $10 dresses, then they become 11, 12, 20, 30. They're just bleeding you. All these silly girls who can't wear... I don't want to... Why wash a dress? I'll just buy another one from Temu. So they don't save money. They're just empty consumers and they don't have children because... Oh no, children cost money. And then they go out and buy a pair of shoes. Oh no, children's hard work. Oh, there's too many children. Cope. Seeds and seeds. All the propaganda pumped in their little tiny brains. As you can see, what is that? What is this flickering box, you may ask? That is an object recognition. That is, so the operator knows what the AI is considering the target. It's considering multiple targets at the moment, but it's probably being clicked by the operator to select this one. Yeah, this is a view of the drone. As you can come, it's actually come over. This is the drone watching from above Odessa, and now, yeah, so much for Captain Sky Shield, right? Now you're gonna ask if Russian drones can operate with such impunity. No, this is after they got through the air defenses. There's no air defenses actually in the city. There, it's outside the city. As you can see, look at all the empty ground where once buildings stood. Russia is degrading Ukraine's facilities so much that empty fields are growing over where there used to be buildings. Look at the damage already done to the port facilities. I only got one crane operating. Remember, I showed you this yesterday. They had 7 there in the beginning. They had 2. They're now unloading by hand at dockside warehouses blowing up. Now, in retaliation, Ukraine struck a tourist resort in Russia, killing 12 civilians. This is what's called bringing it home, folks. This is Ukraine's idea of ending the war. Kill civilians to force a regime change in Russia. 50% of the people who started viewing this video will have cut out now because they're going to say Russian propaganda. They can't bring themselves to look at the true cost of war. So they cloak it in by they want to deny reality by cloaking it, by cutting it out of their brain by calling it Russian propaganda. The worst propaganda is the truth because it hurts those who don't want the truth. It doesn't matter. Xi's an evil dictator. That doesn't mean you should want to blow up the Three Gorges Dam and watch 420 million Chinese drown. Does it? You want to kill 500 million Chinese to root out Xi Jinping. I bet you, what was it? It's the same with Cuba. You want to go into Cuba. How many communists will fight to the death for the regime? Even though you'll free millions of civilians, how many will die? Millions will die because of the fanatics. You have to root out communism before it takes hold. You have to learn that communists are just as bad as Nazis. You haven't. That's why the lie continues. As I said, China is the one pulling the strings with asymmetric warfare. They're the ones who went into Ukraine first. They're the ones who set everything up in Ukraine and then abandoned them. Probably with a nod and an understanding within Ukrainian intelligence. And I bet you Ukrainian intelligence is full of Chinese influences and agents. And I bet you so is the Ukrainian government. And I bet you there's many who are doing China's bidding right now. And I bet you British intelligence knows and is allowing it because they are Ukrainian. That Ukrainians are infiltrating the West. Finland is not the only one. Freeland, Canada, and you watch. They want a socialist government. They will be secretly working with China, and they will deny it until the day they pull their mask off and say, "Ha, you're right all along, comrade. Now we're going to torture you to death for exposing us." Yeah, this is how they operate. They do never, ever tell you the truth to your face. And they always have a duplicitous nature. Oh, we're going to defend you against Russia. All to distract from, Russia didn't call me a basket of deplorables. And if you don't get the reference, that's a play on Muhammad Ali talking about the Vietnamese, not calling him the N-word. So, yeah, Russia call you a basket of deplorables? No, Hillary Clinton did. Who leaked like all this information to the journalists behind Trump's back? Yeah, your loyal officer, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. What a loyal officer he turned out to be, right? And then he runs as a Democrat. Anybody surprised? No, this is a duplicitous agent of foreign influence. Now, as Russian businesses bleed, and 100 to 200 businesses today will be declaring bankruptcy as Russian insurance is not able to cover the damage to wild berries or any other private business destroyed today. The Russian government is trying to work out what to do. Now, I've put various scenarios to ChatGPT, Gemini, and I decided not to do it with Grok, but various scenarios in which Russian retaliation. Now, according to AI, the Ukrainian economy is impervious, but they are, by all intents, they have decentralized. Most of their major businesses are no longer in Ukraine. Most of their billionaires and millionaires are no longer in Ukraine. Their food industry is so large that it would take Russia, at the current rate, decades to even make a dent in it. But I identified several key points where Ukraine is very, very narrow and very, very vulnerable. And yes, Russia is attacking those targets already. Odessa, Mykolaiv, logistics hubs, over and over again. And as I said, what are you going to do when Russia has 10 Orksks and drops them on one city at a time? 10. What if they take 3 months to make one, but this war drags out, so they'll make them and drop them, and they will. But they're very specialist missiles that are very expensive, but they might consider it and redesign them and go with the Omsk 2 and basically destroy Kharkiv. Basically carve a huge chunk out of it. Next month, carve another chunk out. Say it takes 10, say it takes 20, say it takes 32. Say it takes 32. That's one city. War doesn't end. Then they start systematically destroying the next. They destroy 3, maybe 5 logistics centers in Ukraine, and Ukraine is over. You cannot have a distributed system without nodes. You need places for your trucks to be refueled and to be repaired. Those take up space. You can't have, let's say they do spread out trucks, right? Instead of having big logistics centers. Let's say they go with small post office, right? Well, just destroy each post office. Every time you build a post office, destroy it. Oh, wait a minute, that's what they're already doing. See, Ukraine has hidden its military logistics inside its postal system. That's why they're attacking Russia's postal system, because they're judging everything. They're looking at what they do and say, well, Russia must be doing it. That's how binary people act. They only flip yes or no. They cannot take complex, nuanced things or think other people do things differently. So Russian forces have carried out, precision strikes is neither here nor there. The larger the target, the easier it is to be precise. But they've carried out targets yet again. Yep. Fast craft, because they're cheap. Bulk carriers. Yeah, logistics hubs. That's where Ukraine is most vulnerable. And as you've seen by the pictures of their ports, Russia is successfully pulling the wings off the fly. Russia will come out of this like a prize fighter. A black eye, a few broken teeth, a broken arm, maybe a hip out of joint. But Ukraine is punch drunk. They don't know the fight is over. And they want to continue the fight. Because they think all they care about is winning. And when you reach that stage, there is no winning this war anymore. It's ending, as I've said so often. But people don't want to listen anymore. They want to be told. There is a difference. I'll give you an example. Informing you that Ukraine has attacked the Caspian Sea pipeline. What glazers and simpletons want to hear is Ukraine's glorious attack has devastated the Russians with yet another attack on the Caspian Sea pipeline, humiliating Putin. And you can see the drama, the excitement. And kids, they love it. They lap it up. But eventually, their tiny little brains start eventually catching up saying, I've seen the same video 100 times. Ukraine is winning. Ukraine is glorious. And either they become puppets. I think, splits down the middle, doesn't it? 1 in 3 will become puppets. One will cut out completely and the other one will become an absolute skeptic. There is no saving people who want to glaze and glory and hyperventilate everything. But mark my words, China is behind this all. Trump knows it. He is fighting an asymmetric war. He can't tell you what he's doing because if he tells you, then those who are listening will tell those in Moscow and Kiev and Beijing a different story, but it'll be a story nonetheless that they will take away and work out their own advantage. Because remember, and this goes back centuries, there are those in the intelligence business who work for no side and has been. See, the story about the Kingsman is not fantastical. It's real. There are intelligence services who sell information to the highest bidder and have been doing so for quite some time. The British told the Tsar a different story than he told the Poles and the Germans and others about Napoleon's intentions. And then they have this saying that has been going on for quite some time, a failure of intelligence. Or they just disappear for a while and find someone else to work with. But Tsar Nicholas was betrayed. Why? Because his cousins felt that he wasn't a member of the club anymore. He wasn't one of us. He wasn't playing the game. You got to play the game. You can't take things personally. You're losing. Nikolai, just take it. You could never take a joke, could you, Nikolai? But all Tsar Nicholas wanted was a peaceful life for him and his people. But for those who love games and war, that cannot be happened. It is the Russian curse to be on the other side of the world, which means you're on the other side of the fence, which means you'll always have someone driving past and throwing a beer can at you because they're an angry little asshole who want the world to burn just so they can sit there and watch it burn and go, ha ha! And that is why we have a Ukraine war. I'm not blaming the British, I'm blaming MI5, who are predominantly not British, by the way. It's a mixture of foreigners. The British people are nothing but a shield, a distraction. The British spokesperson for MI5 is nothing more than a puppet who has multiple hands up his posterior, pulling at his various organs to make him jump and his lips move the way they want him to move. His brain is only so functional as to be a parrot. But this world is designed for parrots to succeed, because the vast majority of people are nothing but parrots who can repeat simple tasks taught to them. And there are those who long for something more intelligent, something more daring, something more bold and entertaining, and that is actual recognized human intelligence, whether it be the arts. But no, the liberal, they just want their MCUs. They whatever tickles their tiny brain over and over again. Tickle their balls. So yes, Star Wars and lightsabers and AT, the next wing. Yes, the vast majority out there are nothing but special ed kids, and they don't want the truth. So those who reach this far are people who not only want the truth, but demand it. So thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel and support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Once again, thank you and see you in the next video. Bye for now.